I subscribed to a podcast that predicts my death. It started as a joke. My roommate, Kayla, sent me a link to a podcast called The Final Countdown. Her text read, "Oh my God, try this." Supposedly, it predicts how and when you'll die. Creepy, right? I was bored, scrolling through TikTok and ignoring the laundry I'd been putting off for 2 weeks. So I clicked the link. The podcast's description was simple. A personalized glimpse into your inevitable demise. Subscribe if you dare. I laughed. It had to be some kind of gimmick, right? But curiosity got the better of me and I hit subscribe. The first episode popped up immediately. For Sam Johnson, August 17th, 2032. Heart failure. You're welcome. Sam Johnson? Who's that? I figured it was some kind of random demo episode. But then the next one started playing. For Emily Rivera, September 22nd, 2028. Car crash. Okay, weird, but still, just a creepy prank, right? Then it happened. For Tyler Morgan, January 13th, 2025. Falling. My stomach dropped. That's my name, my exact name. And today's date? January 8th, 2025. I paused the podcast and stared at my phone. Falling? Falling from what? My apartment was on the ground floor. Maybe it's a coincidence. Tyler Morgan isn't exactly a rare name, but the feeling of dread had already wrapped itself around me. The next day, I couldn't stop thinking about it. The way the voice had said my name felt personal, and it didn't help that Kayla was eating it up. "Tyler, you're totally overthinking this," she said, munching on a bag of popcorn. "It's just some AI program. They probably scraped names and dates from social media. But how would it know the date? And why falling? Maybe you'll trip over your untied shoelaces," she teased. Honestly, I wouldn't be shocked. I glared at her, but she had a point. I was clumsy. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. That night, I got another notification. New episode alert for Tyler Morgan. My heart pounded as I pressed play. January 9th, 2025, 3:47 p.m. You'll trip on the curb near Wilson Street. A delivery truck won't stop in time. Sorry, Tyler. I dropped my phone. It'd gotten more specific. And Wilson Street? That's on my walk to work. I decided to stay home the next day. No way was I tempting fate. Kayla thought I was ridiculous. You're going to rearrange your whole life because of some creepy podcast? It's probably an ARG or something. Alternate reality games don't predict specific streets and times. I shot back. She rolled her eyes but left me alone. I stayed inside all day, peeking out the window like some paranoid shut-in. When 3:47 p.m. came and went without incident, I let out a huge sigh of relief. But the podcast wasn't done with me. That night, another notification appeared. For Tyler Morgan, January 10th, 2025. Elevator malfunction. Nope, I was done. I deleted the app and unsubscribed. Whatever this was, I wanted no part of it. The next morning, Kayla was scrolling on her phone when she gasped. "Tyler, did you see this?" She shoved her screen in my face. It was a local news article. Delivery truck accident near Wilson Street claims 2 lives. My blood ran cold. The timestamp on the article? 3:47 p.m. "You were right to stay home," she whispered. For the first time, she actually looked scared. But I couldn't stop thinking about it. If I hadn't stayed home, would I have been there? And what about the elevator? I avoided elevators all day, taking the stairs everywhere. My legs were killing me, but I felt safer until I got home. Kayla was gone for the evening, so I grabbed my laptop to do some digging. Who created the final countdown? How was it predicting these things? The internet had nothing, just a bare-bones website with the same ominous tagline, a personalized glimpse into your inevitable demise. Subscribe if you dare. There were no creators listed, no contact info, just the subscribe button. Then my phone buzzed, another notification. For Tyler Morgan, January 11th, 2025. Fire. I stared at it. Frozen. Fire? In my apartment, at work? I couldn't take it anymore. I grabbed my phone and smashed it against the counter. The screen shattered, and for a moment I felt victorious. But when I turned around, the notification was on my laptop. That night, I barely slept. Every sound felt like the start of a fire, a crackling outlet, a distant siren. I unplugged everything, even my fridge. Kayla came home and thought I'd lost my mind. "It's just a stupid podcast," she yelled. Then why did it predict it? She didn't have an answer. Neither did I. January 11th came and went. No fire. But now I was checking every dark corner of my life. The podcast had burrowed into my brain, and I couldn't shake it. By January 12th, Kayla was gone. She said she needed space from my insanity. I didn't blame her. I wasn't even mad. I just felt alone. That night, I got one last notification. For Tyler Morgan, January 13th, 2025. Falling. It had come full circle. Falling. The same prediction as the first episode. But this time, it felt inevitable. No matter how careful I'd been, it kept coming back to this. I stayed up all night, pacing. By morning, I was a wreck. I didn't go to work, didn't eat, just stared out the window, waiting for something to happen. At 8:30 p.m., I heard a knock at the door. My heart leapt. Who would visit me this late? It was Kayla. She looked pale, her eyes wide. "Tyler," she whispered. "I subscribed to the podcast." My blood turned to ice. Why? I don't know. I thought maybe it was fake, but her voice cracked. It just gave me my date, January 14th. Tomorrow. Car crash. My legs gave out. We sat on the floor, silent. What had we done? And how were we supposed to stop this? The next morning, Kayla refused to leave the apartment. She paced the living room, mumbling about car crashes and alternate routes. I tried to console her, but I was barely holding it together myself. "We'll figure this out," I promised, though I didn't believe it. Maybe if you don't go near a car, it won't happen." She nodded, clutching her phone like a lifeline. But then she gasped. "Another notification," she whispered. She showed me the screen. For Tyler Morgan, January 13th, 2025, 11:59 p.m. Falling. The time had changed. The day was almost over. My heart pounded as I looked at the clock. 11:30 p.m. Less than 30 minutes to go. Kayla grabbed my arm. "Stay right here. Don't move. I'll make sure nothing happens." I wanted to believe her, but my body felt like it was on autopilot. I started pacing, avoiding windows, sharp corners, anything that could lead to a fall. The minutes ticked by, agonizingly slow. At 11:58 p.m., the apartment's fire alarm blared. Kayla screamed, and I froze. Smoke seeped from under the kitchen door. "Tyler, we have to go," she yelled, grabbing my hand. We ran outside, coughing, my heart pounding in my chest. The cold night air hit my face as we stumbled onto the street. I glanced at my phone. 11:59 p.m. The world tilted. My foot caught on the curb, and I felt myself falling. Time seemed to slow as the ground rushed toward me. But before I hit, Kayla yanked me back. A delivery truck roared past, its headlights blinding. My knees buckled, and we collapsed onto the sidewalk. The clock struck midnight. We sat in silence, trembling. The podcast hadn't won. Not this time. But as Kayla's phone buzzed with another notification, I realized it wasn't over. For Kayla Thompson, January 14th, 2025, 3:15 p.m., car crash. I met her gaze. "We have to stop this." And for the first time, she nodded. "Let's find out who's behind this." We started our search that night. Sleep wasn't an option with Kayla's clock ticking down. She grabbed her laptop while I paced nervously, replaying the day's events in my head. If we'd managed to escape my death, maybe there was a way to stop hers too. Kayla pulled up the podcast's website. "There has to be a clue here," she muttered, scrolling through the same bare-bones page I'd seen before. "This doesn't make sense. Who's running this? Why us?" "Maybe there's a trail," I suggested. "Like metadata or, I don't know, something techie." She raised an eyebrow. "You think I'm some kind of hacker? You binge-watch true crime documentaries." Close enough. With a sigh, she dug deeper, running searches on the podcast's origin. Most of the results were dead ends. No social media, no press, nothing. Just user reviews on obscure forums, all eerily similar. "It's too accurate to be fake. It predicted my cousin's death to the minute." "Don't subscribe. Once you do, it's impossible to stop." One post stood out. "The countdown doesn't lie, but maybe it can be hacked." Kayla clicked the link, revealing a lengthy thread of conspiracy theories. Some users claimed the podcast was an AI experiment gone rogue. Others thought it was a government project to control population growth. A few suggested it was something supernatural. "This one guy says he hacked the feed," Kayla said, pointing to a username, Countdown Breaker. "What happened to him?" I asked. She scrolled to the last post. It read, "Tried to overwrite my episode. It worked, but now I'm hearing the voice everywhere." The thread ended abruptly. No updates, no follow-ups, just silence. Desperation pushed us forward. We found an email address buried in the thread and sent a message to Countdown Breaker. To our surprise, he replied almost immediately. You can't stop the countdown, but you can delay it. Meet me at 2nd and Main, midnight. This feels like a trap, I said, my stomach churning. Do we have a choice? Kayla shot back. Her eyes were dark with exhaustion, but burning with determination. Midnight couldn't come fast enough. We arrived at the intersection, shivering in the cold. A figure emerged from the shadows, a man in his 40s with disheveled hair and darting eyes. You're the ones who emailed me? He asked, his voice hoarse. Kayla nodded. How do we stop it? He shook his head. You don't. The best you can do is buy time, but it comes at a cost. What cost? I demanded. He hesitated before pulling out a small device. This disrupts the signal temporarily, but every time you use it, someone else's countdown speeds up. Kayla and I exchanged horrified looks. You mean we save ourselves by dooming someone else? It's the only way, he said grimly. I've been running for years, but you can't outrun it forever. We left the meeting with more questions than answers. The device felt heavy in my pocket, a grim reminder of the choice we faced. Kayla's countdown loomed over us, ticking closer to 3:15 p.m. What do we do? She whispered as we sat in the safety of our apartment. I didn't have an answer, and time was running out. At 2:45 p.m., Kayla's anxiety peaked. We have to use the device. It's the only way, she said, her voice trembling. I hesitated. If we do, someone else will pay for it. We're trading their life for yours. And if we don't, I'll die. How is that any better? She was crying now, and I hated seeing her like this. Finally, I nodded. Okay, but we have to live with this. She grabbed the device and activated it. A faint hum filled the room, and the clock on her phone froze at 3:14 p.m. The relief on her face was immediate, but it didn't last. The hum turned into a high-pitched whine, and the device emitted a burst of static. Her phone buzzed with a new notification. For Kayla Thompson, January 15th, 2025, drowning. What? She whispered, staring at the screen in disbelief. It just changed my death? My phone buzzed too. I looked down, my heart sinking. For Tyler Morgan, January 15th, 2025, burning. The device hadn't bought us time. It had sped up our fates. The next morning, we packed our bags and left town. Running felt like the only option, even though we knew it wouldn't work. Wherever we went, the podcast would follow. Its notifications would find us. By January 15th, we were holed up in a small motel by a lake. Kayla wouldn't go near the water, and I avoided anything flammable. The tension was unbearable. At 11:50 p.m., the fire alarm in our room blared. Smoke poured in from under the door. Tyler! Kayla screamed, pulling me toward the window. We climbed out onto the fire escape, coughing and gasping for air. Below us, the lake's dark surface glistened under the moonlight. We have to jump, I said, my voice shaking. Kayla hesitated, then nodded. Together, we leapt into the freezing water. The cold was a shock to my system, but it felt like salvation. When I surfaced, I couldn't see Kayla. Panic set in as I called her name over and over. Finally, I spotted her limp body floating nearby. I swam to her, pulling her to shore. She wasn't breathing. Desperation took over as I performed CPR, screaming at her to wake up. After what felt like an eternity, she coughed and sputtered, her eyes fluttering open. You saved me, she whispered. I collapsed beside her, tears streaming down my face, but our relief was short-lived. My phone buzzed. For Tyler Morgan, January 16th, 2025, freezing. The podcast wasn't done with us, and we knew it never would be.